The discovery of bad clusters has led to a completely different understanding about the actual cause of psychosomatic diseases and behavior disorders. Bad clusters are also the root cause of why we suppress painful memories. But what exactly are bad clusters? And why do they make us sick and sabotage our success and behavior? To understand their dangerous and negative power, it is useful to familiarize us with some of the basic functions of our brain. Our brain is a complex mechanism. The subconscious part of our brain processes, on average, 1 million times more data than will ever reach the conscious part of the brain. So most of what you do in your brain takes place outside of your conscious awareness. Each of your senses, seeing, hearing, touch, smell, and taste, has its own defined area in your cerebral cortex. Within each of these sensory areas, each individual cell has its specific task. The same brain cell that receives a specific sensory detail also processes and stores that particular detail. All of our experiences are stored as comparison material, so we can use it later on to analyze and identify similar data that we perceive. Because of this process of storage and comparing, we don't have to learn things over and over again. And our database of experiences is constantly growing and growing and growing. Our brain cells are very specific in their task. So much more that, for instance, the cells that processes and stores the color, for instance, green, can only store that particular color green, no other details. This means you, me, and everyone around us has got pre-programmed brain cells for each color, each smell, each sound, motion, shape, etc. And each of them can only process and store one specific detail of the whole picture. But even the most ordinary everyday experience, such as drinking coffee, having breakfast, driving your car, shopping, contains thousands and thousands of details. And each of those details are processed and stored in your subconscious database by specific brain cells, each with their own specific task. Each of these individual details always gets two distinctive types of codes. Because of these two types of codes that are assigned to it, your subconscious mind is able to determine which combination of cells belong together as one specific memory, and also what your personal value of that particular memory is. I could go on for days about this coding system, and also about the far-reaching implication it has. And the same goes on for bad clusters. But I shall limit myself, and I shall focus on the essentials here. Let me give you an everyday example to explain what a bad cluster is and how it affects your health, behavior, and success in life. Let's look at this example. It's morning, and Charles is in the kitchen having breakfast. He's drinking a cup of coffee and eating a sandwich and some cereal while reading the newspaper. In the background, the radio is playing Yesterday by the Beatles. All of a sudden, Charles feels sick and nauseated. His heart starts beating faster. He starts to sweat. He's getting dizzy, and he feels a pressure in his chest. How is this possible? He doesn't understand. To him, It doesn't seem like there is anything unpleasant out of the ordinary going on. Wrong. A lot is going on in his subconscious mind. And that is causing his sudden, unpleasant physical reactions, as became clear during a PMA session later on. 5 years ago, Charles' father had died in a car accident. At first glance, there is no obvious link to how he feels during his seemingly relaxed breakfast. But let's go back with him and watch what he felt 5 years ago. It was early in the morning, and Charles was enjoying his breakfast when he received suddenly a phone call. It was the hospital. They told Charles that his father had had a fatal car accident. His world was falling apart, and he felt like he was losing all control. What did he feel at that moment? Sick and nauseated, and his heart started to beating faster. He started to sweat, feel dizzy, and he got a feeling of pressure on his chest. The physiological codes that caused these negative panic reactions were linked to each single sensory detail that he perceived at that moment, and they were stored together. At that moment, he created a bad cluster. Shocked and stunned, Charles slowly walked into the kitchen and sat down at the table. He looked at his sandwich, cereal, and coffee. The radio softly played Yesterday by the Beatles. Dazed and confused, he took a bite of his sandwich and he washed it down with a sip of coffee. But what activated the bad cluster 5 years later? It was activated by similar sensory details. Details like the smell and taste of the coffee, the bread and the cereal, the colors and the shapes in the kitchen, and the words and melody of yesterday. These individual details showed a sufficient similarity to the stored details of the bad cluster. Seemingly insignificant details, but sufficient enough to activate the bad cluster and cause the exact same negative physiological reactions he had 5 years ago. Will we only create bad clusters during such a shocking news as in our example? Unfortunately, no. You create a bad cluster at any given moment that you're frightened enough to experience the feeling of losing control. The feeling that there is nothing to hold on to. Don't make the mistake to think that this only happens in extremely tragic moments like this. In your childhood, you regularly create bad clusters, and often during events that you wouldn't even take seriously as an adult. They might even make you laugh now. But when it happened to you as a child, you did take it very seriously, and it frightened and shocked you. To you, it was scary enough to make you lose control, and therefore you stored the events as bad clusters. Incorrect storage of all these early events lead to neurophysiological short circuits, or in other words, bad clusters. And even after decades, they can still torture you and even make you seriously ill. And they will also sabotage your life in several areas. Do you always need a large number of similar details to activate a bad cluster? No. Sometimes just a few details, like some colors, smell, words, or a facial expression, can be enough. The main problem with bad clusters is that you cannot simply remember their content. This is because the access to bad clusters is blocked for the conscious brain. Therefore, you cannot consciously make the connection between the sudden negative feelings in your body and the content of an activated bad cluster. Have you ever experienced unexpected negative feelings or an unexpected sudden pain, nausea, headache, or other symptoms without an apparent cause? Are you familiar with that urge to come up with a seemingly plausible explanation for these negative feelings? Is it not an automatic response to blame something or someone in our surroundings? We tell ourselves that it might be caused by the flu that is going around, or it's too hot, or too cold, or too noisy, or because you ate something bad, or it's the behavior or something your spouse, children, or colleagues said that could cause these negative feelings. Do you recognize these kind of behaviors and looking for an explanation and these belief systems that you derive from that? However, none of your explanations are the real cause of your symptoms. The unpleasant consequence of these wrongly developed beliefs is that they have a profound negative effect on your opinion and behavior towards the people that you're now incorrectly blaming for your negative feelings. This way, many relationships are unnecessarily damaged. Activated bad clusters cause many marital problems and other relationships issues among people, be it in business, education, or government institutions. If a bad cluster stays active for a longer period of time, it will not only sabotage your behavior, it will also seriously damage your health. Progressive mental alignment, or PMA, is the technique that allows you to locate your bad clusters and transform their harmful, disease-causing power into healthy and inspiring energy. PMA is applied as a self-help technique, but it's also applied more and more in the medical world, in personal coaching, relationship counseling, education, government agencies, and also in the business world. There is so much more to tell about the brain, the conscious, the subconscious, the mind, bad clusters, how behavior come to exist, emotions, etc. PMA gives you an unprecedented insight into all of these matters. If you would like to explore more about this miraculous world of our subconscious brain, then I would like to invite you to watch my future video presentations. See you next time.